Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Oh, Alder DeCola, you're alive. Did you get my messages last week?
Yes, I did.
Madam Chair, how's your technology working out so far? You're muted at the moment, but you look beautiful. You're still muted, but I can see that you're talking.
See what I mean? That's what I'm talking. Let's see. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Greetings and good evening, everyone. How are we all today?
Doing well, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to see everyone. This is our last meeting for the year. To God be the glory. I hope everyone have a nice holiday when it comes.
Yeah, just
Amen.
just to let you know, the next finance meeting should be January 11th.
Oh, geez.
Don, when you said May 11th, I thought, you
I
do
was
like a
hoping.
budget fast track this year or what?
Yeah. One can but hope.
Woof.
One can just exactly by hope.
Yeah, they haven't gotten the calendar, so I can't set up the dates for next year yet.
21. Right. We're gonna get through it, whatever it will, whatever it is. What does it look like, committee? All right, I see. Do we have? Let me know when we have a quorum and when we can start.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum now, according to the names on the tiles, although we don't have video yet. Oh, there's a video for Alder Santiago.
Oh
Hey.
yes, Alder Ernie. Yes.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So as soon
We
as
can
we're
start.
recording, you may begin, Madam Chair.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, community, family, everyone. Welcome back to the
Madam
Finance
Chair.
Committee meeting. Yes.
Madam Chair, we're not yet recording.
Oh, we're not.
We should wait till we are recording.
Oh, I thought you said we were recording. That's why I started speaking.
No, I'm sorry. I meant to say as soon as we start recording.
Okay, cool.
Don, are you controlling the recording or is Mr. Lucas doing that? Oh,
I was doing that.
now we're doing it. Madam Chair, you may begin when ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Finance Committee meeting, the last one for this year, 2020. Today, December 14th, 2020. Automatic notice, New Haven. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 14th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via video conference. Meeting can be viewed at https://bit.ly/2jpjyjx or by phone at 646-558-8656. Meeting webinar ID 944-351-3571-0543. Phone password 575-29807. The Finance Committee will hear the following items. Item number 1, LM-2020-0503. Order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven, authorizing the execution of the collective bargaining agreement between the New Haven Board of Education and the New Haven Federation of Teachers, Local 933, AFT, AFL-CIO, July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. Item number 2, LM-2020-0508, order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven, authorizing the execution of the Board of Education agreement with Frontline Technologies Group LLC for the period of October 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2024. Item number 3, LM-2020-0488. Order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven approving a 60-month equipment lease and service agreement between Xerox Inc. and the City of New Haven, including its Board of Education for fine print management program services. Item number 4, LM-2020-0493. Order concerning the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of October 2020 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. These items are filed with the city clerk and may be inspected at room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven. Per order, Honorable Yvette Hamilton, Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance, 203-946-8122 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY. Public may join the meeting and may send public comments to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov via video conference. Meeting can be viewed at https://bit.ly/2jpjyjx or by phone 646-558-8656. Meeting webinar ID 94435-71043. Phone password 575-2987. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. I will start with our usual, with the calling of the committee members' names and identifying of the members of the audience that are committee alders but are not members of the committee. As usual, my Vice Chair Alder Marchand goes through the procedure and we get right into the meeting. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll start with the roll call. I'm here. Alder Marchand?
Here.
Alder Marchand, are you here? Thank you. Alder Ernie Santiago?
Here.
Thank you. Alder Salvatore DiCola?
Present.
Thank you. Alder Jeanette Morrison? Alder Taisha Walker-Myers?
Here.
Thank you. Good evening. Alder Anna Festa?
Here.
Madam Chair, I believe you're frozen. We'll give you a moment.
Alder Festa? I see you. You look like you're frozen.
You're frozen, Madam Chair. I am here if you can hear me.
Alder Festa, we recognize you. Thank you for being here. Alder Furlow.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair. I am present.
Thank you, sir. Alder Evelyn Rodriguez.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm present.
Thank you. Alder Hurt. Alder Decker.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. I see that our chair has momentarily disappeared. I suspect that she'll be back soon, but in the interest of time, I will carry on in her absence. We have a quorum. We'll move forward with all of our items this evening. We will proceed as we have over the past several months. You're back, Madam Chair. I'm in the process. I'm making the procedural announcements, and I'll hand it back to you. So we'll deal with each item in order. We are asking colleagues, we'll ask colleagues if they have questions in the order in which they're listed on the web and the order in which we just went through it for the roll. We ask colleagues please to limit your questions to 4. If at the end of the queue, there's more time, in the opinion of the chair, colleagues may have a second opportunity to ask follow-up questions or further points of clarification. And then we'll proceed with public comment. We do anticipate taking action on 3 of the 4 items. Item number 1, as is usually the case, the time frame for approving a contract is quite tight. And so most likely we will not take action on that item this evening so that the full board may discharge it from our committee in our next full board meeting. With the other 3 items, we plan to act on this evening unless we receive some information that causes us to decide otherwise. So those are the announcements. Let's recognize our colleague Abby Roth, Alder of the 7th Ward, who has joined us as well. I do not see any other alders in the panelist or
Someone is
attendee.
on a phone, Alder Marchand. Someone is on a phone. I don't know who that is.
That's correct. Galaxy S8. Who might that be? And that person is no longer with us.
Oops.
All right, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. And we'll start with the first item on our agenda this evening, item number 1. This is the contract with the Federation of Teachers and the Board of Education. Mr. Lucas, do we know who's presenting?
Yeah, Mr. Penn is waiting to be let in. So in a moment, we'll have our guests, our panelists. Mr. Penn. I see that our chair seems to be frozen at the moment. I will assume running of the meeting until she returns. Mr. Penn, we see your name. Can we see your face and hear your voice? Oh. You're muted, Mr. Penn.
Bear with me 1 second. There we
There you
are.
are.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good evening, Alders. How are you all tonight?
We're well. Your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Philip Penn, Chief Financial Officer, New Haven Public Schools, 2 Hollyberry Lane, Burlington, Connecticut, 06013.
Thank you, sir. And before you proceed, I wish to recognize Alder Jeanette Morrison, who has joined us. Please proceed, Mr. Penn.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So as you all had in the materials that went out in advance of the meeting, this is a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with Local 933, which is our teachers union. We normally would have gone for a new 3-year contract that would have negotiated this fall. Going back to I would say late summer, early fall timeframe, we started having conversations with the head of the union about, rather than a full-blown negotiation, a 2-year extension off the current contract that would take us out to the June 2023 period. The union sort of recognized that we were in a pretty tough financial spot coming out of 2019-20 and going into 2021. And so we worked on what I would call a very abbreviated negotiation process, where we were mostly focused on salary items, and in particular, looking at it from a step perspective, and we can go through with that, exactly that means. And then trying to come up with something that would avoid going to mediation or to arbitration if it didn't need to. So I would say that the conversation that I had held with the union leadership over the course of a couple of weeks was very productive. Dave Ciccarella, for those of you that know him, did share with me, and I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, that the ratification of this contract by the teachers produced one of the highest turnouts they've ever had for ratification, and one of the highest margins of passage they've ever had for a contract in his memory. So I would say it was collaborative from that perspective. As you'll see from the fiscal impact statement I provided, the total fiscal impact statement over the 3-year period off a base of almost 30 million for teacher salaries is just over 9.3 million, or 7.18%. Now that would compare, based on what Shipman and Goodwin, our outside counsel, had indicated, was average settlements of just over 8%. So we're within about a point of where the average settlements would be. Roughly 70% of that breaks down into the general fund, and the remaining 30% is in our special funds, what we would call grants, right? The way that this is going to work is that there's a hard zero in fiscal 2021. I think most of you know that from prior discussions that we've had and from what we've talked about on the Board of Ed side. In fiscal 21-22, it's a step-only increase, no GWI, but with $2,000 added to the top step, because that step won't advance, obviously, once you hit the top step.
Mr. Penn, may I interrupt you? GWI, is that general wage increase?
Yes, sir, it is. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Not everybody knows those terms.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So very similarly then, in 2022-23, there is also no GWI, no general wage increase, but step increase again, with $1,000 added to the top step. The teachers requested that because they were taking the hard zero in the first year, that their contribution to healthcare be frozen at its current 1920 level for the 3 years of the contract. We also did agree that we would not do any layoffs during the period, but that, you know, we would certainly be looking at things from an attrition standpoint as we go forward. But they wanted some security, obviously, in this contract, and I don't blame them given the pandemic period that we're in. It was a pretty significant give back that they had for 2020, 2021, the current fiscal year that we're in. That hard zero was probably worth about 4.5 million, with about 1.2 of that in the special funds, i.e. grants, and the other 3.3 in our general fund. But as I said, this went through the Board of Education a number of weeks ago. Took us some time to pull together everything for the Board of Alders submission, and that's what brings us here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Is that the sum total of your presentation on this item?
It is.
And may I, I reviewed the material, and based on your description, it sounds like mostly it's about wages with very few other changes to the existing contract.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We went through a decidedly very limited negotiation specifically for that reason.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, our chair is not with us. I'm hopeful that she will return, but what I'm going to do is just run the meeting as if in her absence. And so I'm going to start the queue with the name that follows me, work through the list, and I'll be the last on the list, as is the case with Madam Chair. So first on the list for questions is Alder Ernie Santiago.
No questions.
Thank you, sir. Alder Sal DiCola.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have one question. Is there any MOUs following through within this new contract that has a financial impact to us in the future?
There are MOUs that are disclosed at the back of the contract that lived on, since we did not embed them into the contract language, but they are disclosed. And there's nothing new that I'm aware of that's followed on after this.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's nothing new. Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Alder DiCola. Alder Morrison.
Questions, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Walker Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just have one question. You decided to take a a shorter period in negotiations. Was that due to COVID or just deciding to do it that way?
It was a joint decision between us and the union leadership. We knew we wanted to try to make this process as brief as possible. And if we started unpacking every issue that was in that contract, we would probably still be negotiating it right now.
Thank you.
I take it that's all, Madam President?
The Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just one question. In general, I would be asking, how do we compare to other contracts? But this seems to be an unusual situation because it's an extension of their current contract. But even that, how do we compare to our neighboring towns?
So the statewide settlements, according to Shipman and Goodwin, who we still use to help put together the final document, they had indicated to us that what they've seen over the prior year or so are statewide settlements of just over 8% for a 3-year agreement. 8.23, if I recall correctly.
Okay, and we're at the
7.18.
7.18%.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so we're not that far off.
No.
And are those negotiated contracts? Those are the latest contracts, that 8%?
Yeah, it would have been whatever was negotiated in the past year that they've seen. That's right.
Okay, so it's pretty close. And how about the medical portion?
The medical, I don't have good records on. I would assume in most contract full-blown negotiations, there would have been probably some percentage increase toward contribution toward premium. But obviously that was not in this contract for us.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure we're being fair to our teachers, considering COVID and everything that they're going through as well. All right, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Next on the queue is Alder Furlong.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Actually, my question was answered, and I don't have any additional questions, having reviewed the material at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next on the queue is Alder Evelyn Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question in reference to the criterias. Have the teachers' criterias changed in terms of work environment, since now things are very different in the classroom and teachers are doing a lot of work with electronics and home base? So has that been taken into account in terms of teachers and their salaries and what their benefits? Thank you.
Considering your question for a second, I would say that there are no specific changes in this contract with regard to working conditions, but there's ongoing dialogue between the administration and the union leadership as we've evolved along the path of this pandemic. And so when we talked about going remote, it was very critical for us to have the union support be around that. And we've tried to be as receptive as possible, of course, to concerns that they've raised around building conditions, around PPE, around any of those other safety protocols that need to be in place, specifically before they come back in to the building. And that's an ongoing process, as you might expect. But there are no specific changes in the language of the contract regarding working conditions.
I'm sorry. I just want to say thank you, because teachers that are in the classrooms, in the school buildings, it is not the same as teachers that are working from their homes and through electronics. Yeah. It's just something, and I'm glad to know that there's a conversation that's happening, because it's going to be interesting to see what the contract and the bargaining happens in regards to the work environment and the work setting and our children's and the classrooms. Thank you.
If I may add on to my answer, I would also say that goes both ways. We've also had 170 certified staff request an ADA accommodation to continue to work from home because of their age or because of their underlying health conditions. And we've been as supportive as we can be with that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Marchand.
Thank you, Alder Rodriguez. I see that Madam Chair is back. We'll just finish out our list and I'll return the reins to her. Alder Hurt is not with us. Alder Decker.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Alder Decker. Madam Chair, before I hand it over to you, I suspect we ought to allow Mr. Penn to move on to the next item. Knowing that
Yes.
he probably has another meeting tonight, it would be good for him to move right into the next item before we ask for public testimony on the first two items. Does that make sense to you, Madam Chair?
Yes, indeed. So noted. Go right ahead, Mr. Penn, and thank you for your indulgence with my tech issues. I apologize and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we've all been there, so I completely understand. So let me talk briefly about the Frontline Technology submission, if I may.
Right
Frontline
ahead.
Technology is an existing software provider that we use pretty extensively in the district. They provide to us what's called the AppleTrack system, which is how we track inbound candidates to our system. They track a wide array of other things. It's a pretty key software product that we have within the human resources area. Probably sometime in the early summer, we were approached by Frontline regarding a new technology or a new piece of software that they thought we would be interested in. And there's two additional modules that this agreement covers, and they're very distinctive. One of the modules is designed around reducing the amount of physical paper that we process to onboard a new employee. And if I may speak about my own personal experience, when I got hired, I had a stack of about a half an inch of paper documents that I had to fill out when I first joined.
Okay.
All those paper documents had to be filled out, had to be returned, had to then be processed by somebody down in HR, meaning that they had to review it for completeness, send it back to me if there was an issue, send it to the various departments around the district to say, here's the processing for a security badge or a new hire, get me on the payroll system, get me over the benefits area. It's quite a process.
Right.
So module number one converts all that to an electronic system, so that all of those forms will now be digitized, making it very easy to capture the data to see if the items are complete and to forward everything electronically. And the electronic is a fillable PDF that can then be forwarded very quickly. Now, one of the reasons we were attracted to this is that in the past 4 years or so, the HR department on the BOE side, because of budgetary concerns, has cut its FTE count by about 2.5. But unfortunately, a lot of the work did not migrate away.
Right.
So we have a lot of folks that still process a lot of turnover in employees during the summer, as you might expect. And I think the first summer I was here, we onboarded something like 300 new employees. That's the average. So that's a lot of 300 half-inch stacks of paper to go through to get people on board.
Right.
In a fairly concerted amount of time as well, because you need everybody here to start the year. So from my perspective, that's very much an efficiency play for us going forward. The second module, I'm personally kind of excited about because what I think the potential for us to do with it. That's their recruiting module. And what we're able to do with that module is specifically go out and canvas for candidates based on certifications or skill sets or other search factors to try to attract on a proactive basis to New Haven Public Schools. Our current process, as you might know, is we post for a job and we wait for people to come to us, and we hope that they do. But in many cases, in particular in tough hiring areas, chemistry, for instance, math, things that are tough hire areas, this now gives us the capability of going out and searching for people that have those capabilities. As you may know, one of the other things that we've been working on fairly aggressively over the past couple of years, and it predates me, of course, is hiring more people of color into our certified teaching ranks. We now have the ability to go in and search for people that attended, historically Black colleges and universities to specifically say, we want to try to attract from that pool going forward. So our head recruiter, and if you know her, Kanika Ingram Mann, is very excited about using this potential technology to start attracting people on a proactive basis to the district. You know, this past summer was a bit of an abnormality in terms of the number of staff that turned over. We probably had 70-ish certified staff turnover. That's not very many compared to an average year. But when you're going out and trying to still even fill just 70 roles in a 2-month period, it can get pretty hairy. You know, and so I know there's an awful lot of work that goes on, but if you can imagine, as we start to identify openings now, we now have the technological capability to say, well, who's got that certification within, say, the state of Connecticut? And who might be able to start reaching out to and saying, hey, have you ever considered coming to New Haven and sharing your experience with us? So I know the HR staff is very excited about it. I'm personally very excited about this software because I actually got to see it demonstrated to me. And it's pretty slick stuff. And as you may have seen from the background materials that went out, there are a very large number of school districts that use this within the state of Connecticut. So we're a little bit of a late adopter, but I'm glad we're finally here. Now, the last point is we're going after a multi-year contract because they offered us a discount of $22,000 over the contract. So to me, that was meaningful enough to consider doing a multi-year contract. The reason they asked for multi-year is that there's a lot of implementation that they have to do as a software company at the beginning of the process. Converting all our forms to electronic, making sure all the software integrates properly with what we have currently right now. So from the vendor standpoint, they have to make a pretty big investment in us at the beginning. And that's where their interest in a multi-year contract comes from. But for my personal interest in the district, I would say, saving the $22,000 seemed worth bringing to you for the potential of doing a multi-year deal. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Penn. And with that, we'll start with the questions. Alder Marchand, you're on the roster.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Mr. Penn. I like the sound of savings, but I note that if we don't hire them and don't spend any of the money, that's a lot more money saved than the money that you're proposing to spend.
Sure.
Now, it may be that it's worth it. I'm trying to piece together some of the things you said in your presentation. It sounds like you're down a couple of staff in your central administration.
That's right.
And you're hiring this firm to perform a function that others might have performed had they been working. Am I correct in concluding then that this is just a straight up outsourcing of work that used to be done by employees of the city of New Haven?
I would say to you, based on my year here, and I've had HR reporting to me for about 3 months now, the current staffing situation is untenable. I'd be going back to the board to hire a full-time FTE to supplant some of the work that we have that is being done right now, because it's the paper-based process that we're dependent on, and our current search vectors are not working for us as efficiently as they should be. I think we cut that staff back too far, frankly.
I see that the cost of this is $60,000, give or take, for the prorated first year of the contract this
That's
year.
correct.
And then 80, 85, 90 over the next 3 years, something on that order.
Yes.
That is about a full-time equivalent position, not an executive level position, but like a clerical position.
With benefits, I would agree. Yes.
With benefits. So I would assume then that this contract, do you feel that it will provide more support and higher level support than could be purchased by hiring a full-time equivalent person?
I think it does, actually, yes.
Tell me more about the capabilities that this firm has and that the software offers that you couldn't do just with more boots on the ground within your HR department.
So from my perspective, and I'm not an HR expert, I'll admit to that, right? I think this gives us the ability to search a very large database of candidates that probably could not be done easily from the standpoint of easily searching for particular certifications, for instance. They've indicated to us that they have several million people that participate in this database. And that's certainly not to say we have 1 million certified teachers in Connecticut, but AppleTrack is the system that almost every school district in Connecticut uses. So if there's a candidate that's ever generated a profile with an AppleTrack and has indicated that profile is shareable to the public, i.e. to recruiters, we then have the ability to drill down into that. Now, I'm not aware of any other package that really gives us that kind of capability, other than somebody trying to canvas on LinkedIn or some other type of software that really is more personally driven and frankly doesn't have the specific expertise around trying to get certified staff. And I think that's really what sold me on this, is the level to which you can drill down in terms of your search capabilities.
Thank you for that response. My last question, Madam Chair, is about the time frame here. I saw that the Board of Ed voted on September 28th to approve this. The term of the contract begins on October 1st, which
Right.
is 6 weeks ago or something like that. So I assume the company's already begun work.
They've begun the preliminary part of what I would call an integration, yes. But so far it's been fairly limited.
But that's before our approval.
It is, and they're aware of that. So we have not paid them anything.
Okay. Thank you for those answers, Mr. Penn. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alder Marchand. Alder Ernie Santiago.
No questions.
Alder DeCola.
No questions at this time.
Okay. Alder Morrison.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm interested in the recruitment ability that this system appears to provide. So let me see. My question: the contract does the real plan to have. So if this is approved, do you guys plan to have a very intentional recruitment effort as related to persons with HBCU backgrounds or from the schools in the South? And the reason why I ask that, as we all know, I'm born and raised in New Haven and went through all the schools, but the schools I needed to go through. And a lot of my teachers, looked like me and lived in my community, right? And I learned later, as I got older, that was done intentionally by the superintendent at the time, Dr. Dow. And the intention was they specifically went to HBCUs, they went to the South, and they got all these teachers, these Black teachers, to come from the South to the North to teach in our school systems. So for me, I even to this day, I thought that's what the school systems look like, but I found out that it doesn't. And so I'm asking this to see if this type of behavior will be repeated. Will there be an intended focus on trying to recruit teachers with the HBCU backgrounds? And the reason why, and everyone knows the reason why I'm asking this, is because it's very important for young people to be able to look at people that look like them. Mm-hmm. And so to have a very diverse school system population, to see it, like I'm talking specifically of being of color, being a Black person.
Sure.
To see a Black teacher, a Black principal, a Black superintendent, and people in all these different roles is very important to the self-esteem of our children. And it lets them know that they too can be whatever it is that they want to be. Mm-hmm. So I say all that to say, I think that this is good so far from what you went over and from what I saw, but I want to make sure if something like this happens, that there is a very intended process put into place to reach out to these young adults with this background. And then to add to that, does this system, because in your presentation you said you wanted to reach out to the people, I thought I heard you say locally or that's in the system that went to HBCUs, but I'm looking for a little deeper than that. Does this system allow you to nationally, you know, go into other, does it link you with other, I guess, groups of people or, you know, resumes or whatever it may be to have that direct connection?
Okay.
I know that was a lot. So bottom line is, are we gonna make specific efforts to recruit minority teachers?
So let me say this, Alder Morrison. I equate this tool with chainsaw. Chainsaw is a very powerful tool, but if you leave it sitting on your shelf, it doesn't do anything for you.
Mhm.
So I don't intend to go buy a piece of software and then not do anything and not fully leverage that software to its full capabilities.
Mhm.
I think you're 100% correct in saying that it's very important for our young staff, our young people to see staff that are successful, that look like they do. So my intent is, as we go forward, to work with my HR team to say, let's try to measure the return that we got on this investment. How many people were we able to recruit from those HBCUs? How did that produce? What did that produce for us now that we have the software compared to not having the software? And I think it's important anytime you make a purchase decision like this to have that kind of validation. And we want to, frankly, hold Frontline accountable for the promises they made around the capabilities that the software has. So my understanding is we have access theoretically to their entire pool of applicants across the country. Anybody who has said that my profile can be shared, and I equate that to, I mean, social media is a terrible example, right? But you can either have a private profile on social media or you can have a public one that people can search for and see what interests you have and that kind of thing. So to some degree, we're going to be leveraging those capabilities to say, you know, can we pull people in? Now, are we going to get people moving here from Seattle right away? I'm not going to promise that, right?
No HBCUs in Seattle yet.
You know, right, exactly, exactly. But when we talk about a global pool of applicants, I don't know that we're going to necessarily have people that are going to do cross-country moves. But to my earlier point, I think it's really, really important that we utilize the full capability of this software going forward.
Okay, so Madam Chair, through you, if this is approved by this committee and the full board, can we ask the Board of Ed to come back this time next year with some stats in regards to what happened? Because I'm very interested in seeing that, because we do have to make some very intentional efforts, and not just HBCUs. I mean, one of the other things that they did back in the day, they went to Puerto Rico because children need to see people that look like them in very successful roles.
That's right.
And so I too want to see that. You know, if we gonna be digging, let's dig.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison.
Madam Chair, may I make a point of order real quick?
Yes, go right ahead.
I noticed that there's a member of the public who's entering information on the Q&A function in this Zoom meeting, but that function is not part of the public record. So that person should wait for the moment to testify as part of our public testimony. Unless a member of the committee reads the Q&A and wants to ask the questions on her behalf. But the Q&A function and the chat function, they are not part of the public record for these meetings. And so if somebody wants to, if a member of the public wants to participate, there will be a moment where folks who are attending may be promoted to panelists and to give their public testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. Moving right along, Alder Walker Myers, you're next on the roster, ma'am.
No questions at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alder Fester?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of questions. You mentioned two modules, Mr. Penn, one of them which is getting rid of physical paper for new employees, et cetera. What is the cost savings to implementing this type of software? We're making an investment, but down the road, we should also be seeing some cost savings. Do you have any idea what that could be?
I would say it's relatively a cost avoidance issue that I will not have to hire another staff person to support that effort going forward. And I would say that's probably in the range of somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 a year, if you factor in benefits.
And how about on the material side? You know, you said there's like half an inch of paper, an inch of paper with the documents. That's a lot of paper.
That is a lot of
And
paper.
if-
I would
and if
say I
we're-
probably did not factor the paper and printing into that estimate. So that would be accretive to what I just said to the person. That's right.
Okay, so we would be saving on paper and printer, ink and all of
Absolutely.
that, although we have contracts with
Um,
Xerox, but okay. And then,
Postage costs, things along those lines too, because most of those things go out either priority mail or overnight, or as the case may be, depending on the criticality of the hire. That's right.
okay, thank you. Regarding module 2, the recruiting module, you may have answered this, but let me just clarify. The candidates need to be part of the system. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And we are also competing with other education departments that have this software,
correct.
correct? Okay.
Might I add that we're competing against them now without it?
Correct. It just seems like this might make it even maybe a little more competitive on some levels. But I guess that's okay too, because we can hopefully encourage and attract the talent to New Haven versus our neighboring towns.
Sure.
And let's see. Oh, the actual pricing, does that include maintenance, training, software updates over the period of the contract?
It does, and it includes all their implementation costs as well. That's correct.
Okay, so it does include everything for the term of the contract.
It is an all-in price. That's right.
Okay, and this is only software we're talking, no hardware.
No, it's just software.
Okay, perfect. And do we know who has this software already?
Yes, if I recall correctly, I believe there was a document in the package that went to called Frontline Supporting Docs or something along those lines. And there was
I
a
don't
full-blown,
see it. Okay,
yeah, it's a PDF document. I'll make sure that you all receive it though. I'll work through the liaison. But it had a pretty comprehensive list of everybody in Connecticut, all the districts in Connecticut that had it. I don't think it had the nationwide list because it would have been pages and pages. There you go. Thank you. So those are all the districts in Connecticut that have it.
okay. I don't remember seeing that document. Was it in our packet? Huh. Okay, anyway. I'm scrolling, but I don't see it. And then lastly, you mentioned that it already was voted in the Board of Ed. It's already somewhat been implemented, because I noticed that as well, as my colleague already addressed. What was their impression of this software?
It was a unanimous vote to move forward with it. I think they saw the value of it from both a recruiting perspective and an efficiency play.
Were there any particular concerns that they had?
No, none that were expressed either by the full board or at the F&O meeting. I did give an overview presentation, and I did also have the benefit of having a few of the HR staff with me at the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, also to talk about the utilization of it going forward.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Alder
Madam Chair,
Furlow?
Madam Chair, point of order, may I recognize Alder Eli Saban, who has joined us.
Oh, most certainly. Good evening, Alder Saban.
Alder Hamilton?
I see I'm on mute. Okay,
Alder Hamilton? If I
Yes.
might, I have these supporting documents in PDF. The reason it was not sent out is it's 45 pages long.
oh,
If anybody wants it, let me know and I will email it to them.
okay,
Usually I put in the comments that there is a document, but because of the number of pages, I don't send it out. But if you want it, let me know and I will send it to you.
So noted. Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Did colleagues hear that? Next on our list for question, Alder Furlow. Do you have
Thank you,
questions
Madam
for
Chair.
Mr. Penn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to state also that We all did receive an email that if we needed additional information, then Mr. Hayden would supply that to us. And so that's definitely part of our responsibility to make sure that we read all the emails. Mr. Penn, I don't have any additional questions or more lengthy dialogue for you. I appreciate your presentation and all the work that you're doing on the Board of Ed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Alder Furlow. Alder Evelyn Rodriguez, you're next, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to bring a question. Thank you, Chair, Madam Chair. Mr. Penn, we have a lot of efforts being made in regards to job seekers seeking employment. We have Connecticut Works, we have the Connecticut State Department of Education, and we also have the State of Connecticut Department of Labor, where we have individuals pursuing employment in all fields. And we have the Connecticut Department of Labor, I believe, has efforts and has programs and has services for employers directly. And through their Connecticut Hires Job Bank, they have something similar to what you're presenting to us, where we can place a job, post a job with a job description specifically toward the interest of the employer. So I'd like to know, have you looked at these things and have you reached out to the Connecticut Department of Labor to help in the matter of making a good match, finding a good match? Employer, employee, Department of Education, and a Connecticut employee.
So I want to be very candid with you that I don't know the full extent to who our HR team reaches out to. I know when it comes to certified staff, and that's really where most of this product is targeted to, CT REAP is where we tend to post the most. That is a fairly common one that most teachers are aware of in Connecticut. Depending on the type of role, we'll also post on LinkedIn and a few of the other job search sites. The key difference that I see about this, and this is what really piqued my interest in it, is it's the difference between proactive and reactive when it comes to candidates. Now, we can very easily go out and post on all those different websites and wait for the candidates to come to us. What's different about this is it allows us to go and screen for those candidates and start contacting them directly. So that if we see somebody who has got a very specific skill set that we're after, a bilingual teacher, somebody who has a physics background or a chemistry background, somebody who is a reading specialist or certified to be one, it allows us to drill down pretty far into the weeds to find the kind of candidates that we're looking for, and then allows us to go pursue those candidates through either email contact or direct phone contact, as the case may be. So that's really the key distinction from my point of view. We do go out there and we do canvas quite a bit on these other sites, but we're very much dependent on the candidate to come to us. This reverses that.
And I want to say thank you, but I do believe that our Connecticut Job Banks is that sophisticated that it does allow the employer to identify job seekers with credentials and criteria that you may be looking for. It's just something that you may want to further explore with our Connecticut Department of Labor, seeing that we have so many Connecticut job seekers looking for work. The other thing I'd just like to share with you, one of my colleagues did talk about how to identify potential candidates and individuals that went to Puerto Rico and interviewed and brought individuals from over there. There's a big difference having individuals that live in the state of Connecticut, live with us, versus coming from other countries to teach our children. And I believe that's the Board of Education of Connecticut has looked at that a little bit more carefully in the last few years, because we have had public testimonial to this effect. So I want to say thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is Alder Hurt with us this evening? Alder Ron Hurt? No, huh? Alder Charles Decker, you're next, sir.
I have no questions, Madam Chair. Thank you. I would just like to second the line of question and comment that my colleague Alder Morrison said, though, which I believe was very well stated. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, this is Alder Adam Marchand. I note that there's a person in the attendees group called Ward 15, and perhaps he should be promoted to panelist. I would also note that my understanding was that Mr. Penn may have to leave before too long to attend a Board of Education meeting. And if that's, and perhaps Mr. Penn could tell us if that's indeed the case.
I will tell you that both of these topics are very important to me, and I'll be happy to spend as long as you need me to be here.
Okay. So the reason I brought that up, Madam Chair, is perhaps now is a good time to ask for public testimony on these first two items, since they are the most dependent on Mr. Penn's expertise. And so that if there's any questions that come from the public, he can answer them after. And you're muted, I think, or silent.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You're muted, Madam Chair.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Go ahead. You got a point of order?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for future reference through you, Madam Chair, is it possible that when we have these item agendas to include all documents, at least to the committee, please? Thank you.
They are available to the committee. You just have to ask our staff person for them and he'll send them to you.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I think it should automatically be sent because sometimes we don't know if there are additional documents. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I am asking, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on item 1 or item 2 on our agenda this evening? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on item 1 or item 2 on our agenda this evening? I can't see the full scope of folks, so Alder Marchand and or Mr. Hayden or Mr. Lucas.
You do have one, Katie Hughes.
Hi.
Hi, good evening, Katie Hughes. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Caitlin Hughes. I am at 88 Edgewood Avenue, New Haven, apartment 3E.
Thank you. Go right ahead, please.
So I just wanted to speak on using the technology to help onboard new employees to the school district. I don't really have an issue with the efficiency of using that to reduce paper. But I would just like to speak as a freelancer. I go to Yale right now, but I used to work as a freelance theater technician. And so I've gotten a lot of jobs in a short period of time. And what I've noticed is that pretty much any automated system for incoming employees to try and streamline the job ad process, it doesn't work, especially if that requires a membership to a job site. Anything that is easily Googleable is usually what works best. So I wanted to express some doubt on how well that would work. Just by Googling New Haven school district jobs, I was only able to find a page that had a couple postings from 2019 and nothing from 2020. So I think the first step might be to include a work for us page on the school district website. That might help people come to you a little more easily. Another way that I've gotten jobs very frequently is through Facebook. It's free, it's easy to look up. There are Facebook groups for, and this is from technical theater. There are plenty of Facebook groups out there that say, hey, put a job ad in here, and people look at it and apply to it. So frankly, I don't know if this would be the best use of money. Also with those Facebook groups, there are affinity groups. Like I'm part of a technical theater queer group for individuals that identify as queer. There's also a POC network on Facebook for theater technicians. So I think that if you just explore these resources a little more, you could easily find some of these groups to reach out to, different minority groups to reach out to, and find teachers or find new employees without having to pay a company a couple extra $1,000. I just wanted to speak on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on item 1 or 2? Anyone else from the public? And for a third time, anyone else from the public?
Madam Chair, nobody has raised their hand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hayden. So we'll move on then to item number 3 on our agenda.
Madam Chair, point of order, perhaps we ought to afford Mr. Penn an opportunity to respond to the testimony if he feels there's a need to do so.
Did you want to respond, Mr. Penn? Adam?
Yes, Madam Chair, just very, very briefly, just to thank Ms. Hughes for her commentary. And in particular, what she said about a Google search for jobs at New Haven Public Schools. You know, it's interesting to me because as she was saying that, I pulled up our website and there is actually a page that says careers at NHPS. But that leads me to think I need to work a little bit better with our webmaster to try to figure out why we're not populating in those search engines the way that we should be for that. If we're making ourselves hard to find, that's not good. I will acknowledge that, and we'll try and see what we can do better.
Very true. All righty.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Would it be okay if I be excused at this point to tell elsewhere?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Go right ahead. Thank you for joining us this evening, Mr. Penn.
If I don't talk to you folks, have a nice holiday. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
And you as well. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
And holiday.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along to item number 3 on our agenda, which is the Xerox agreement. Who is the presenter for that one? Is that Mr. Gormley?
Yes. Hi, Madam Chair. How are you?
I'm well. Good evening, sir.
Good. Hello, committee members. Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, Brantford, Connecticut. I believe also, I cannot see, but Michael Fumiati, our purchasing agent, should be here as well. So I don't know if he can give his name and address.
Mr. Fumiati, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I see you. I don't see you on video, but I do hear you.
I don't know what happened. Everything just went blank.
Oh, it's okay.
There we go.
Oh, hello. Good evening. Name and address for the record, sir.
Michael Fumiati, purchasing agent, City of New Haven, 10 Winding Road, Madison, Connecticut.
And I believe we actually have one of our, I see the participants, one of our reps from Xerox on as well. So if he can give his name and address also.
He's muted.
You got to unmute.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I just unmuted. Ronnie Reeves. I'm the Xerox representative for the City of New Haven and Board of Education Xerox contract.
Okay. Address for you, Mr. Reeves?
I'm sorry?
Your address, sir?
28 Lincoln Street, North Haven, Connecticut.
Thank you, sir.
East Haven, though.
All right, thank you, committee. What you have before you is a contract for Xerox, a multi-year contract. Xerox is our current incumbent who provides our printer software, our print management, our mailroom services, and we are coming up to the current expiration of their contract with the City of New Haven. So they provide the services, the print management and the copier hardware and software support for both the city and the Board of Education. And again, what we're looking for is a 5-year agreement, which is based off of a cooperative purchasing agreement that Mr. Fumiati will go into in a minute or so for these services. So what we're looking for is to have Xerox perform the services again for another 5 years. Just an FYI, and I don't have it in front of me, but I believe there was one document in the submission that had 72 months on it. I'm not sure if it was my letter or another document, but we are currently looking for 60 months, a 5-year agreement, not 72. I believe the majority of the other paperwork says 60 months. So what I'll do is I will turn it over to Mr. Fumiati, our purchasing agent, who manages the printing and mailroom services for both the city and the Board of Ed.
Good evening, folks. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the presentation this evening. As Michael said, Xerox has been our contractor for the last actually 9 years. Back in 2000, we went out and we did an RFP and we solicited contractors that had cooperative purchasing arrangements because it actually aided in the vetting process. So it was the bigger companies that we really needed for an account of our size. Currently, we have, and I think we'll continue to have 313 devices. The acronym eludes me at this moment, if you can imagine that. I must have said it 1,000 times in the last 10 years, and I can't remember what the heck it's called, but it'll come to me. We've got these devices, and they also manage all of our either owned or Xerox owned or any other brand owned printers. So they manage all of that for us. They monitor all the equipment, the usage of it. When the equipment's down, the copy center at the Board of Ed is like the hub of where all this happens. They know that equipment's down sometimes before we even know that that there's a problem with something, if it's low on toner or anything of that nature. One of the beauties of this new program is by entering into a new contract, they're going to change out all this equipment. So it'll all be brand new, out of the box, energy efficient equipment. And the new toner cartridges have about a almost not quite 75% increase in the number of prints in a cartridge. So, from a green standpoint, we are not, changing out these cartridges and disposing of them or even recycling them at that point because they have a much, much longer life to them. Part of the contract with Xerox is PaperCut. PaperCut is a program that we can use our badges to go up to any machine and tap on the machine, and it will allow us to, if need be, to print in another office, in another building. All we have to do is set the print up in our printer. We plug in a 4-digit PIN, and you can actually go and print a document anywhere. The benefit of doing that is that sometimes people print stuff and then they decide they don't need it, they don't want it. So it doesn't actually print until you go to the machine and say, print this out for me. Now, print, we are moving more and more digital. So the beauty of also of this equipment is we have DocuShare, which is the document management software that comes along with this program. And we've done a lot with scanning and indexing documents that would have otherwise been paper copies in some vault that we'd be paying storage fees for years and years. So although that stuff can be discarded after a period of time with the appropriate approvals, here we have an infinite supply of space and room to store all this stuff, and we can have it readily available to us. Xerox also, as a partner, I mean, the staff that they've provided to us is top notch. They've provided a program this past summer, started, albeit not as much as we would have liked because of COVID, but the Xerox Digital Careers Pathways program at Hill House. And they're going to be train students to help provide with the skills and appropriate certifications in the printing and graphics art industry and prep for job opportunities after they graduate, if that's the case. We pay a fixed price per machine, and then we pay a per click price on the actual copies, both black and white and color. And we have reduced, we've saved about $3 million over the last 9 years. And every contract, and Ronnie can attest to them, it is a PEPM contract. It is, it is negotiated with a cooperative purchasing arrangement, but we beat them down. We get the best deal. We get as much as we possibly can for our money. So even now, this next 60 months, we're only going to save $1,000 a month, but that $1,000 a month doesn't take into account the fact that in the last contract, we actually added in the library. So even though we're saving $1,000 over the prior contract, we're actually even saving more because we've added all those devices in. We've added some other software in for management of DocuShare. And lastly, the new equipment, as I said, is going to be energy efficient. It's also going to have like an app library on it that we can, as a municipality, and I'm not sure who's going to manage this as far as the apps go, but we can send messages out that'll pop up on the screens to say, hey, it's, I don't know, whatever, season's greetings, or something as simple as, it's COVID-19, make sure that everybody takes appropriate actions of washing their hands, or whatever the case may be. There's a digital screen on every machine. So it's business as usual, but it's going to be a little more efficient. And it, as a note on the bottom, it meets all Energy Star, Blue Angel, and EPEAT environmental compliance regulations requirements. In a nutshell.
Thank you, Michael. I think, Michael highlighted some great points. And I think, especially with COVID, as we move more into a more efficient workforce and into a more digital age, I think, Xerox has been a great partner for us in the past. And, they have some ideas that can also work for us going forward as well. So we'll be happy to entertain any questions that the committee might have.
All righty. And with that, we'll start with Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I did review the material. I guess the question that came to my mind, and I can't remember if the material answered it, is this is a contract renewal. Was there any requirement for the city to put this contract out to bid, or did the city do any due diligence at looking at other vendors that could provide the same services? And what was the conclusion, if so?
So
and obviously, I know the conclusion, but more about why you concluded this way.
So one of the benefits of staying with Xerox is we have the DocuShare program. We have the PaperCut program. Most other companies that we're aware of do not have this available software for us. There would be a huge transition. I mean, that's not to say we couldn't, but there's an expense and a learning curve associated with changing out. Bridgeport recently went out and did a bid, and they discovered that Xerox was the best deal, even based on their bidding requirements. So we were comfortable that this was the right way to go, and we're continuously saving money.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Fumiati. My next question is about the time frame. I see that the contract is intended to start on January 1st, 2021 and go through the end of December 2026. Our normal approval process takes some weeks. We wouldn't vote on this until second meeting of January, perhaps. Is that an issue, considering that we already have an existing relationship with Xerox?
No, it's not. It won't be an issue. I mean, in an ideal world, this would have happened a couple of weeks earlier. I think there was just sadly, a paperwork snafu on our part one or the other of us thought that we had already prepped the paperwork, and by the time we went to do it, it was too late for that meeting that would have happened like the month previous. The ideal situation was to try to do this, on January 1st, just to start with a new year. We decided to do it this way rather than a June 30th, so that we're not dealing with year-end school stuff. Any kind of transition would have happened over the Christmas break. This year, I don't know that it's going to matter so much. I don't know how much school will be remote in the month of January. So even if this is approved later, we can still get started with it. And basically the 60 months will kick in from whatever day we start. It'll be 60 months from then.
That's correct, Alder Marshall. I was going to say if we needed to, we can amend it. I mean, we're talking about maybe a month or so. So if we really needed to amend the start date.
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm sorry. I was supposed to be saying that to my children. I meant to be on mute. Excuse me.
No, it's just that I think if we needed to amend the start date to like February, we could. That with our relation, I think that's also one of the benefits of staying with our relationship with Xerox. That wouldn't really be an issue.
Okay, thank you for those responses. Apologies again for sharing with you words that were intended just for my family, but thank you very much. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Alder Ernie, questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Alder DeCola?
Yes, I have one question. We talked about this in the past. Have Xerox improved when we do mailings? I know there's multiple steps. Xerox brings the mail to one place before it gets processed. A lot of times the alders do mailing to the whole ward and the mail is really late. So have we improved those steps? I know it goes to Shelton and then it goes to Hartford. So when we have priority mailing, do we get priority efficiency?
So let me, and Mr. Fumiati can correct me anything that I missay, but Xerox, they perform our mailroom function. They're not the ones who actually do the mailing services on behalf of the city. That's actually another vendor who does that. So what Xerox does for us is they go around to each department, they collect, they sort, they do the interoffice mail. And again, I think one of the benefits of this new contract that we would be doing with Xerox is we would actually be looking at changing that process, possibly, and going to what we call a digital mailroom, which is instead of going around to each department doing various things, it involves more scanning in other areas. But to get to the crux of your question, Alder DeCola, Xerox is not the vendor who actually does the mailing for the system. They basically prepare everything, and then that vendor actually just picks up the mail from the mailroom.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're trying to make it more efficient. So when we have mailings, a lot of residents have complained that they have gotten it late. So as long as we're working on this, then that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alder DeCola. Alder Morrison, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, but I did want to respond to Alder DeCola. I was one of the main people talking about the mail issues with Xerox and all of that. I didn't know who it was, but whatever that file was, they got it together once we as a board brought it to their attention. And so now the mail acts like regular. You get it in a couple of days versus it taking 2 weeks to get on SWAB. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Alder Walker Myers, do you have questions?
No questions at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Alder Festa.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious to know that $1,000 per month savings, where it's coming from. You mentioned that the number of prints per cartridge is actually increased, but are there other savings as well?
So there will be, so that's sort of an estimated savings based on the current usage. as we scan more and more and print less and less, that number can grow potentially. The equipment itself is the quality is better than it is, but the cost to operate it is our monthly fee is a little bit less on all the equipment, and the savings, which I can't quantify right now, but it's lower electrical and power consumption as well.
Yeah, and that's what I figured as well.
Right.
Also, the contract includes all the maintenance, and is there software upgrades to some of these printers?
They take care of everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Software is included. All of it is included, and I believe they work very closely with our IT department with any kind of upgrades or anything. But it's all on Xerox.
And this includes Board of Ed?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
So it's City Hall and Board of Ed contract.
City, Board of Ed, libraries, parks, DPW, all the outliers, everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All righty. Thank you, Alder Festa. Are you finished? That's it? All right. Alder Furlow? Alder Furlow?
He's not responding, Madam Chair. Let's move to the next alder.
Okay, Alder Evelyn Rodriguez.
No questions at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Alder Hurt is not on the meeting, right? Alder Decker? Any questions? Alder Charles Decker?
Madam Chair, I do not see Alder Decker at the moment, so I believe we can move to the next item.
He's the last one on our list.
Yes.
All right, we'll move to the next item, which is our monthly.
All right, thank you, committee. So I will pull up the screen. Sorry, technical difficulties here.
All over the place.
And committee, I don't know, do we need Michael and Ronnie here anymore? I don't know.
No. Point well taken. Let me just say this. Is there anyone from the public that wanted to speak on that Xerox contract before we move on to the monthly, so we don't have to hold these folks here if they're not needed? Anyone from the public that wants to speak on the Xerox contract? Anyone from the public that would like to speak on the Xerox contract for a third time? All righty, hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Thank you for having us.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Moving right along. Okay, Mr. Gormany, you can start addressing the last item, the monthly now.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
So we are here to talk about the monthly financial report for the forecasted through the month of October. And I have shared my screen just to go over a few pages in the monthly report. So the deficit in the monthly report, there wasn't a lot of change between the month of October.
No, they will vote at the end. So they'll go down the list and actually.
Between
Can we mute if we're not speaking, please?
All right. So there wasn't a lot of change. Oh, sorry, Madam Chair.
Go, Mr. Gormany, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So there wasn't a lot of change in the actual monthly report. There was one significant change that I'll probably spend a few minutes on, which sort of drove down the deficit from about 13 million to 10 million, and that was our Board of Education. I think, as I mentioned in the last monthly meeting, that, I see that deficit depending on month to month, sort of fluctuating, but not really going higher than 13 or $14 million at any time. Again, it fluctuates based on, in the Board of Education is a good example, based on something that can happen in any current month. Excuse me. So going through the monthly report, starting on page 4, one of the things I know the committee asked was, what have we spent on COVID? So what I wanted to do was sort of put in 2 columns so the committee can sort of see what we spent on COVID. So as you can see, the first column in the first section is really the city labor. So you see March to June, our overtime for COVID was $729,000, a little bit over. For July to October, the amount was $132,000. Now there is one caveat, and I did find it after we published it, but the fire department actually spent around $33,000 or $34,000. I think there's a 3 missing in that area there. So just so everyone knows, it was about $33,000 through the month of October for the fire department. What we did was we sort of categorized the expenses by department, so you can see where a lot of the major expenditures were happening. So for example, in finance, which houses IT, this was a lot of, for March through June, a bulk of this 385 was IT software. And that was sort of getting us up and running during COVID. So the Zoom licenses, virtual desktops, other areas that our IT department needed to have employees teleworking. A bulk of the cost really took place in our community services department. And these were for the hotels for employees and homeless. I know we heard about the career shelter, Shelter One, and other areas, and food is really what community services was spending a bulk of the funding on. So as you can see, from March through June, we had a little bit over $500,000. And right now, from July to October, there was a partial week in November in these numbers, but it's about $230,000. So that's basically what we tried to show, was sort of categorize it by department and what we spent on COVID to date. So when you look, it's the 3.1 million plus the $861,000 is the total amount from March through October on what we spent on COVID. Now, again, I will go through from an accounting standpoint. The COVID fund is set up as a special revenue fund, so it's a grant. So these expenses are not hitting the general fund because we expect to be reimbursed by FEMA, the state of Connecticut through the Corona Relief Fund. We currently have applications into FEMA that we're waiting for. So what happens from an accounting standpoint is we book these on a separate ledger that does not hit the general fund. And whatever's left over is what is the city's responsibility. So it's basically our share, our 25%. And if everyone remembers, during the fiscal year 2019-20 pre-audit report, there was an amount that I moved over, $1.2 million to that fund as what I estimated as the city's cost share. So the city already took an approach of trying to cover its local share early, even though we knew there would be estimated expenses in the next fiscal year. So moving down to revenue, there were not a lot of revenue changes. We didn't see a lot of revenue shift between the month of September and the month of October. We are still projecting about a $5.1 million less in revenue during the fiscal year. And a lot of this has to do with the impact of COVID. So we continue to monitor certain revenues like parking meters and parking tags. And on a side note, I do owe this committee, I will admit, I do owe this committee some answers to some questions from the last monthly. So I am working with TTMP to get answers to those questions on the revenue. But I do realize I owe the committee some questions. But we do continue to monitor the revenues because obviously COVID is definitely having an impact, especially on our tags and our parking meters. You know, so that's something I will continue to keep the committee apprised of during the fiscal year. For taxes, we are at 52, we were at 52% collection. So again, it will be really telling in the next 2 monthlies on our tax collections because the second half payment is due at the end of January. So, you know, we'll get a very good barometer of where taxes will land for the fiscal year closer towards that area. Just so everyone knows, the tax collections after January are really on delinquent accounts that we're really collecting on. So delinquent accounts of people who may not have paid that second half and may have accumulated interest or who owe back taxes for other reasons, you know, that they owe the city on. So that's really the tax collections that we go after during the month of February through June. But right now, we're currently at 52% of the budget. So this is the expense side of the ledger. Again, there weren't really a lot of changes. The city continued, you know, the city's cost drivers continue to be overtime for both police and fire. So that's something that my office, the CAO's office, the mayor's office, we all continue to monitor the overtime for police and fire for those departments, and we will continue to keep the committee updated. The Board of Education, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Board of Education was projecting as of the end of October a $2.7 million surplus, which was primarily due to COVID and just having certain costs during COVID that would not that we would not have to expense. So this was the Board of Education, and I apologize, as of November 12th. This was the education projection based on Mr. Penn's analysis of where we are. So Mr. Penn and I have talked extensively about our projections and everything. And, you know, we both continue to have the same caveat that this 2.7 can change at any time. It depends on what we're doing from a Board of Education standpoint, as far as will remote learning go the whole year? Will there be a hybrid in-person schedule, which would sort of shift some of this money around? We're currently looking at food distribution plans because, again, food service is part of the Board of Education budget as well, and they are funded based on the number of meals that they serve. So if their meals continue to decline as they are, that will obviously affect this $2.7 million number. Tuition and transportation cost. Obviously, the tuition savings, depending on what other school districts do, if they go back to a hybrid schedule in January, we can lose some of that savings because we'd end up paying tuition costs. And the same thing for transportation. So again, we continue to monitor these numbers. I mean, they're fluid throughout the year. But as of November 12th, they were projecting a $2.7 million surplus.
Okay.
And I apologize, I'm gonna just scroll towards the end. A lot of the other stuff is demographics personnel,
Go right ahead.
grants. Okay, workers' comp. So workers' comp, we did see another savings in that month. Again, I think with a lot of employees teleworking, that definitely has played a role in our workers' comp. Our workers' comp coordinator has definitely been aggressive even during this and working with our third-party administrator, Kerma. I think COVID gave us an opportunity to really look at like our return to work claims, who was out on comp, what the injury is, so on and so forth. We were able to look at it through another lens, basically, with COVID. And I think that's part of why the numbers are going down, is just trying to revamp the whole program still. And I know we talked about it last year, but workers' comp, when there's such, when there's a certain way of doing things and trying to revamp it, does take a while. So, but we are starting to see some of the fruits of our labor with some of these numbers going down, even though it's due to COVID, even though it's partially due to COVID. So we'll continue to monitor the workers' comp program as well. But as you can see, each month, the amount of payments that we've made in the fund has gone down from July through October. So we see a similar trend on the medical side. Again, the medical side, which we've talked about extensively before, that is a combination of COVID, and I will credit Mr. Labrandi in working with my office as he is the manager of benefits, just working extensively to make sure that we are saving money and making sure our employees are getting care, but making sure that it's at a good cost for the city. So we will continue to work on medical. But as you can see, we did see an uptick in August, as I mentioned last month, but a majority of the months, July, September, and October, have been less in the fiscal year. And again, as I'll mention and keep mentioning with medical, we're not oblivious that at some point there will be a spike. It's just a matter of when, because people will start getting elective surgeries and just going to their doctor more frequently. Just things with COVID have opened a lot of people's eyes. And, I'm sure we'll start seeing a spike, which is sort of why you see November through June, you see a 7% increase month over month. Again, that's just a projection. That is an average that I use that obviously changes month by month as well. So on the revenue side of medical, we did see a decrease in a few months of cost sharing, in 1 month of cost sharing. We did project a decrease in the following months. The reason to that was the number of vacancies that the city has. Again, a good part of the revenue besides general fund for the medical fund is employee cost sharing. So as you do not fill positions, or as we eliminate vacancies or whatever, those are adjustments that we have to make to certain funds like the medical fund, because an employee cost share of their check goes in as revenue, as their portion to the medical fund. So again, as we have more vacancies or don't fill positions, that's also less revenue to a fund like the medical fund. So that's sort of why you see that 6% projected decrease. Now, I will tell you that has changed. It's not as much as that, as a decrease as we thought, as I looked at the numbers for November and partially December. But we will continue to look at the revenue to the fund as well. But overall, with the revenues and expenses, you'll see here, we're still projecting about a $3.7 million operating surplus to that fund. Now, a caveat of that is also contributing the full amount of general fund contribution to this fund. we have budgeted $83.6 million out of the general fund. And I'll explain that line in 1 minute. But with that operating surplus, you'll see that we would have taken care of the negative fund balance, and it will actually go into a positive position for the first time in, I think, like 5 or 6 years, basically. So the last page is really just the number of large claims that we see year over year, comparing year over year. We are down 4 claims. The number of claims and the number of dollar amount, obviously that's due to, that's due to COVID as well. I mean, we have more employees teleworking and not, they're basically getting some care, but maybe not all the care that they would have in a normal year. So that's the medical fund. And again, I mentioned the $83.6 million. We're looking at contributing that full amount to the medical fund, but if you remember a few years ago, we collapsed everything into the general fund as one fund balance. So whether we contribute $83.6 million on this ledger or contribute whatever we need to just get this positive, I think, it's still going to have an offset against the deficit that we're showing in the general fund. In the next monthly report, I think what I'll show you is what I've done in sort of the pre-audit report on how all the certain funds affect the fund balance in essence. And that's what I'm talking about is the fund balance, how the medical, general fund, litigation, and workers' comp all look as far as the operating surplus or deficit and what the fund balance will look as if we ended at that particular time. So with that, I will be happy to entertain any questions from the committee.
Madam Chair? Can you speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, go.
I'll take that as an invitation for me to ask questions. Okay. I think Madam Chair is having some technical difficulty, but we'll just proceed. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Gormany. I'm wondering if you're still here. I can't see. There you are.
I am. Yep, I'm here.
Thank you for spending some time on the medical. One of the more encouraging but anxiety producing things is the low number of high cost claims and the low average cost of high cost claims. The best possible scenario is that people are getting better. There are fewer people having catastrophic illnesses or accidents, that we're not having, premature babies in the NICU for many weeks. Avoiding those kinds of difficult outcomes is the best possible scenario. And I hope it's not lower just because folks who are chronically ill and seriously ill are avoiding care, because that would be really bad from a human standpoint, but also those costs will come flying at us with a vengeance. So it's hard to know what that is, but let's just hope for the time being that it's an indication of a lower disease burden within our population, which would be very welcome news. To the point you were making before about the fund balance, when I saw that $2.9 million projected positive fund balance, I thought to myself, well, is that going to be a transfer at the end of the year to close a budget gap? And it seems like maybe that's what it could be, unless that money evaporates. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Gormany?
So correct. I mean, in essence, yes. I mean, again, all 4 funds are one fund balance, so that positive will only have a positive effect. So even though general fund is running, let's say, a $10 million deficit now, it will go down by $2 million because this fund is, or $3 million, because this fund is running a $3 million surplus. So again, it's all it's all how all four funds intertwine basically.
Yes.
To affect the fund balance.
Yes. To your earlier presentation about the COVID expenditures and hoped for reimbursements, I understand, and you made the point before, that all those expenditures are not hitting the general fund, but they did need to be paid for. And so they were, I'm wondering, are we going to face, do we use short-term paper to pay for those? Are we going to face, what potential cash flow challenges might we possibly face if we don't receive timely funding from the state and federal authorities?
No, that's a great question, Alder Marchand. So that's something that we continue to monitor every day, is the cash flow piece for the city, based on the revenues and expenses that we get. But yes, we do have to, like with any grant, we do have to sort of float those funds. There are two types of grants the city gets. Sometimes where you get the money up front and then have to report on what you spent the money on afterwards. A majority of the grants are, you get the grant and then you have to spend the money and send the report as a drawdown, and you get the money once you submit the report. With FEMA, it's that way. We have to work with the federal government, submit all the expenditures. It is actually a very lengthy process. Basically give them copies of every single invoice, give them reports off of our financial report and everything else. Once they go through that process, then we get the money. But yes, that is something that we continue to monitor, is our cash flow. Right now, I have a great treasury and accounting office, and we've just done a great job at managing those expenses and being able to float those funds. But once the money does come in, we will satisfy what we have spent out of the general fund. But that's on a cash flow basis. That does not affect the bottom line.
Mr. Gormany, can I ask about the pilot reimbursement? It seems to be projected to be lower than we anticipated.
Which pilot?
Colleges and hospitals, $650,000 short from the state.
Yes. So again, I think we went through this before. As far as a number that was once there and then a recalculation and everything else. The assumed number for pilot when we did the budget process was a little higher than what actually came in. And there is an offset every year against the pilot. There's something also called Chapel West, where we have to pay a certain percentage once we receive the pilot to the Chapel West Special Service District. So that was about 188,000 of that 600,000. And that is per the code of ordinance when we get the pilot funding. But yes, that was just a budgetary number that didn't come in as expected. So again, hopefully during the fiscal year, again, we continue to monitor revenues, and I'm very hopeful that, maybe some revenues will sort of exceed the budget, and I'm gonna be very optimistic that they will cover some of the shortfalls that we are seeing in other revenue areas.
Debt service, 2.9 million deficit. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. So we were looking at refunding opportunities and refinancing opportunities that would yield us about $2.9 million in savings. I think, the mayor, we had a certain criteria that we were looking at, even though in the market of low rates and refunding opportunities, I think we didn't see any opportunities that would yield the kind of refinancing that we wanted. And the kind of refinancing that we wanted was really not to have any negative numbers in any of the outgoing years. And looking at the different opportunities in the different months that we did this with our financial advisors, we did meet we did meet some of the criteria, but not all of the criteria of what we were looking for. So I think instead of sort of pushing out some debt to future years, I think, that is a number that we're going to try to cover in savings during the fiscal year. As I mentioned last month, one of the things we were able to do during COVID, which helped us with last year's operating results, was operational savings from departments. I have been very strict this year on, what departments are spending and just what is a necessity and what is not a necessity, what are contractual items, what are we legally obligated to spend on. That's what we should spend on. And, so I'm hoping that the savings will yield enough to sort of cover some of the deficits that we're seeing on the expense side and the revenue. And listen, I was up front last month. I don't know if we can cover everything, just by expenditure savings, but we're certainly going to try to maximize the savings. So that's a long answer to your question, Alder Marchand, but yes, the opportunities were not there, so we just probably we'll look at other alternative measures that with debt to see if there's a way to cover that 2.9. But to be conservative, I'd rather just have it as part of the overall deficit, just in case we cannot cover it.
Thank you, Mr. Gormany. We're going to move on to the next person on the list. I will note for the record that there's a person named Yvette Hamilton in the attendees group. Perhaps she should be promoted. It looks like she is being promoted. Next is Ernie Santiago. Questions, Alder?
No questions.
Alder DeCola.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Morrison.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Walker Myers. Okay, if she reappears, we'll ask again. Alder Festa.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do have a couple of questions. Regarding the COVID spending, that is I'm going to assume the 100% cost that we've spent. Is 25% of that reflected in the expenditures?
So that's currently what we're working on, is we are currently working with the state and FEMA so that way we can sort of reflect that number. Within the $10 million that you allocated an expenditure reserve line. So what we're doing is we are seeing how much we actually need from that expenditure reserve line to cover our 25%. And the reason I say that is in fiscal year 1920, we moved over $1.2 million. 25% of the $4 million is only $1 million. So we actually looked and tried to project out, and I tried to be conservative because obviously we don't know what's going to happen in any fiscal year. So again, we moved funding over for our match because we were projecting about $4 million. And we will continue to monitor that this fiscal year. And if I need to make any adjustments on the expenditure side to cover any additional funding for the remainder of the fiscal year, we will certainly make a note of that.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, what on page 6, what is the tax collection initiative?
So the tax collection initiative is something that has been budgeted forever. That basically it's what we think we're going to collect over the budgeted amount of the collection rate. And the reason we don't forecast anything, if you look at any past monthlies, there hasn't been any revenue recognized in there because it really all falls in the real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, and supplemental. So whenever you see an overage in those categories, that's really the tax collection initiative. We just keep it in the other categories for for better record keeping, because I don't want to have to go back 1 year and say, well, how much of that 1.1 million was for real estate per se. So it's basically our estimation on what we think we're going to collect over our current tax budget. It's especially since I know the charter also requires a 1% deduction from the previous year's collection rate. So it's basically an estimation of what we think we're going to be over in taxes.
Okay, thanks for that, because I saw those zeros and it was kind of concerning.
Yeah, but on the monthly, it's, I mean, we could, but like I said, for record keeping, but that 500,000 in delinquent, 500,000 in real estate, 200 in personal property. I mean, if we had we could move that to the tax collection initiative, but then in any year, we'd be trying to figure out what was each category, which.
Nope, that's okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Thank you.
Yep.
Also, you know, of course, when you look at the numbers for police and fire, what are the drivers of, well, the amounts, particularly, you know, the COVID, we could understand, but it's over 500,000 for police, almost 200 for fire, and, you know, 300 fire department, 100 in the expenditure side of things for PD and FD. What is the driving force behind these expenses? Is it COVID, only COVID related?
So you're talking about the COVID expenditures, correct?
Well, both, because,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so for the COVID piece, I mean, the COVID overtime for both police and fire has to be justified to FEMA, and those were only expenditures related to COVID activities. So if the fire department or police department, I'll just use them both, got called to something related to COVID. So the fire department got called to a medical emergency related to COVID or outbreak, whatever the case was. You know, FEMA says that that's an eligible reimbursement. And the same thing with police. We actually have to show, this is part of the long documentation process, that those calls are related to COVID. So that's why we moved those expenses from the general fund into the COVID line. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I mean, there's an increase in overtime, obviously, but is it due to also backfill? So you have maybe a police officer or a firefighter that might be out for quarantine, you have to backfill their position.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is a lot of the fire, and some of the fire and police, not a lot, but some of the fire and police overtime overage that you see is related to quarantining for police and for police officers, because those do have to be backfilled. I would say on the police side, it's definitely more of a shortage of personnel, just because we do have so many vacancies. And, you know, we have seen crime, some of the statistics for crime increase this year. So, you know, I think Chief Reyes is certainly spending a lot of time trying to make sure that, you know, we have the right number of officers and everything on the streets and so on. Fire is similar, you know, unlike police, fire has a minimum manning clause in their contract. So, you know, especially when folks are out quarantining, or when you have quarantine plus scheduled vacation time, you know, that definitely contributes to the overtime for the fire department. So it's a combination of a few things. I think, you know, again, we submitted a fire transfer. I know it's in the committee to be scheduled. I think Chief Austin will definitely elaborate a little bit more on some of the other drivers, but what I see is definitely personnel related from week to week.
And do you know if the fire department is using that program, that tool to manage overtime?
So the program that the fire department uses, which they're looking at the best software now, but They were using Firehouse software, which is a software which is scheduling, timekeeping, and I think they're looking at a few different options. Again, every year we take a look at just various softwares like that to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck, to make sure it's doing everything we could. But right now they're using Firehouse software.
Okay, I thought there was a specific one that they were using.
There's a couple of different softwares that both police and fire and a couple of other city departments use related to scheduling and other things. We have Kronos and a few other ones, but I believe the fire department's main one is Firehouse. They're actually looking at another software as well to help out with that. So, I can definitely keep the committee updated on that if needed.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Also, you mentioned minimum manning, and which is, somewhat hurting us. Do you know if, that has anything to do with the heavy rescue truck as well as advanced life support, paramedics, hiring of paramedics? There's still a big question regarding all of that. And I know there was an MOU out there regarding the heavy rescue. And I think some colleagues and I have put in a communication for that, but it hasn't been heard yet. But maybe you can, whatever info you have.
I can certainly get more information on that, or probably, the chief can probably talk a little bit better than I can about that operational aspect of it. What I would suggest is, whenever the fire transfer is heard, to probably talk to the chief a little bit more about that. To be honest, I just don't have a lot of information on that
Okay.
offhand. So.
Point of order, Madam Chair, just so folks know, there is, of course, a transfer request from the fire department to bring
Yes.
more additional funds into the overtime account, which is not before us tonight, but which we do intend to hear soon. And so we'll definitely make sure that the fire chief comes fully prepared to deal with all the operational nitty gritty that goes into understanding why we have this overtime issue.
Yep. Thank you for that reminder. And just lastly, there's a task force that has been implemented from the health department that includes various departments, building department, fire, police, etc. I mean, how much is that costing us? It just seems like these resources are being used that could be used really where we really need them, particularly fire and police. But why are they involved in this COVID task force if this is a health department issue? I'm just concerned about cost and how effective it is.
Well, I mean, I think, the COVID task force, you've sort of seen in the papers and everything on how effective it is. I think, what the city is trying to do is utilize all its resources at a cost-effective measure to make sure people are complying with COVID guidelines. I think that is the best use of folks' time, and that it spans across different departments. It's not just the health department, but making sure business is in compliance with the LCI and the building code, as well as COVID. So I understand your concern, Alderfesta, about the cost, but I think, in these times, having sort of like a task force that can sort of manage that, manage those initiatives, because not everything happens from 9 to 5. There are things that happen after hours that the city has to enforce. So I think it's really a decision on public safety at this moment, and that spans across different departments. So we've seen a way to collaboratively come together to make sure that we can all enforce each other's departmental guidelines and the CDC guidelines in relation to COVID.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I still question why, police and fire have to be involved, but that's it. I have no further, actually, just one more question. When under finance, you mentioned IT is included in that. that a line item, finance, does that include the Board of Ed?
No, the Board of Ed has their own separate IT department that manages their IT infrastructure.
Okay, so implementing everyone to be online at home, this line item has nothing to do with the Board of Ed.
Yep, thank you. I can appreciate that. For clarification, it's city only. Board of Ed has their own IT.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Do you
welcome.
do you know the cost of that, what it is for Board of Ed? And that's it for me.
I can certainly talk to Mr. Penn and try to get that through the chair of the committee and see. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly what they did from an IT infrastructure over there, but I can certainly check on it and through the committee chair. Get it with all the other questions that I owe the committee.
Great, thank you. I'll look forward to your answers.
All righty, moving right along. Alder Furlow, you're next. Alder Furlow?
He's not responding. On to the next.
No. Alder Evelyn Rodriguez?
No questions at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we know Alder Hurt's not on the call. And Alder Decker, any questions on the monthly?
No questions on the monthly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All righty. Moving right along. At this time, I'll ask for any public testimony on this monthly for the month of
October. Madam Chair, your audio is currently out. I can see that you're speaking, but your audio is out. Can other people hear me? So we're asking for public testimony. Would the city staff please let us know if anybody wishes to testify? You folks may raise their hands. They could send an email to the city staff. Anybody wishing to testify on this final item, the monthly financial report? And one more time, anybody wishing to testify on any of the items on our agenda this evening? Last call for public testimony.
Mr. Vice Chair, there's no hands being raised.
No hands being raised.
I move to close the public section.
Second.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to close the public hearing portion of this meeting? Seeing none, we will vote according to the roll. Madam Chair, I vote yes as well. Alder Santiago,
Yes.
Alder DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Festa,
Yes.
Alder Furlow. That's a yes, we saw. Alder Evelyn
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Alder Hurt is not with us. Alder Decker.
Yes.
The motion carries. The public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. Madam Chair, are you able to be heard at this moment?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you again.
Okay. Thank you. All righty.
Madam Chair, I would just like to note that due to time constraints, it is, you and I discussed asking the full board to discharge item 1 from this committee.
Right.
So that it may be voted on at our next board meeting. And as a result, no action is required on that item this evening.
Right.
Madam Chair, I move item 2.
Second.
Second.
Discussion on item 2? Any discussion from the committee on item 2?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Alder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking in favor of this item. The thing that caused me to feel positively towards it was the statement that it would enable the Board of Ed to be more proactive in its search for candidates and not simply to be a passive recipient of applications, but more of an active searcher of qualified people, particularly people of color. My initial hesitancy was about, was this just a fancy way to subcontract? Because obviously we need to understand if that's what's really going on here, but I've been persuaded that that's not the primary driver of this decision. It's more about having the tools, the most robust tools available for the Board of Ed to do the best possible job of recruiting people, highly qualified people, and certainly people of color for our school population. So I'm encouraging colleagues to vote to give a favorable recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Alder Morrison, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too stand in support of this item. I think we have to be intentional in making the results that we want to see happen. I'm happy to see that the Board of Ed has once again recognized the need to do specific searches or put themselves in a position to get certain groups of individuals to apply to be teachers in our community. New Haven is such a beautiful community because of all its diversity. And our schools definitely need to look like our teachers, and the personnel need to look like the students in the building. And so I hope that this passed tonight, and I hope that it passed through the full board, because we really, really need to be intentional about making this happen. And if you approve, Madam Chair, I look forward to the report next year this time to see if this system actually works. So thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Any other discussion on this item?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to share a little bit.
All right.
Well, I think this is a very a good request. I think it is also significant that either Mr. Penn or our superintendent have a discussion with at least someone in the state of Connecticut Department of Labor's Connecticut Hires Job Bank, or for example, possibly maybe the commissioner of the Department of Labor, maybe perhaps Kirk Westby. So I'd like to make that request. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor, I'm in favor of the item. Alder Marchand, are you in favor of the item?
Yes.
Passing it favorably. Alder Ernie Santiago.
Yes.
Alder DeCola.
Yes.
Thank you. Alder Morrison. Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
I don't want to speak for you. Pardon me. Alder Walker Myers.
Yes.
Thank you. Alder Festa.
Yes.
Thank you. Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Alder Evelyn Rodriguez.
Yes.
No Alder Hurt. And Alder Decker, are you in favor of the item passing favorably? Alder Decker.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah,
Madam Chair, this is Alder Adam Marchand. I move item 3.
Second.
Discussion on item 3, please.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am speaking in favor of this motion. The feedback that we've received has been positive about the contract with Xerox, which seems to have served the city well. I'm glad to hear that there's projected savings, and I'm glad to hear that there's an anticipation of lower material usage and a kind of a greener effect. I'm also glad to hear that we've added the public library system to the organizations within the city that are making use of this contract. We see this as another instance of a centralization of systems and purchasing arrangements that are intended to leverage our buying power and to give us a better price for things like supplies and contracts and such. And so I think it's just a smart way to make purchases and to maximize the value for our tax holders. And I encourage colleagues to vote to give this a favorable recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion on item 3? Any other discussion on item 3? All right, we'll take a vote. I'm in favor of the item. Alder Marchand, are you in favor, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Alder Ernie Santiago, are you in favor of the item?
Yes.
Thank you. Alder DeCola?
Yes.
Okay. Alder Morrison?
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers?
Yes.
Alder Festa?
Yes.
Alder Furlow?
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez?
Yes.
Alder Charles Decker, are you in favor of the item?
Yes.
Thank you. The item is passed favorably.
Madam Chair, this is Alder Adam Marchand. I move item that we give, that we recommend the board read and file item 4.
Second.
Discussion on reading and filing item 4?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Of course, I thank Mr. Gormany for his report. I thank him for separating out the COVID-related expenses that do not hit the general fund, and we anticipate be reimbursed to some significant degree by the federal and state governments. I would also note that there's some information requests from our last meeting and from this meeting. We'll work diligently with our OLS staff to make sure that those responses are received and distributed. And I encourage colleagues to support the motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion on the monthly print reading and filing? All right, we will vote. Alder Yvette Hamilton, yes. Alder Adam Marchand.
Yes.
Alder Ernie Santiago.
Yes.
Alder DeCola.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers.
Yes.
Alder Festa.
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez.
Yes.
And Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
My vote's also a yes, Madam Chair.
Did I miss you, Alder Furlow? I apologize. Very sorry, I apologize. Pardon me. All righty.
Madam Chair, this
Yes.
is Alder Adam Marchand.
Yes, sir.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Discussion on adjourning. All in favor?
Aye.
Or do I need to call the roll?
Oh,
Madam Chair, I believe we should use the method we use for every other vote we
Call
have.
the roll. I'm in favor of adjourning. Alder Adam Marchand, are you in favor?
Yes.
Alder Ernie Santiago?
Yes, I am.
Alder Sal DeCola?
Yes.
Alder Morrison?
yes.
Alder Walker Myers?
Yes.
Alder Festa?
Yes.
Alder Furlow?
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Alder Decker?
Yes.
Well, thank you all for being here this evening. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.